Was it easy to paint? We lost them. Hold on. What do I do? Do I pause it? Alright, I'm going to pause it.
Mini Matters, a miniature painting podcast.
Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Mini Matters. And today we are joined by Matt from Roborocket, who's going to tell us a little bit about what they do, who he is, and a little bit about the company.
Hi Matt, thanks for coming on.
So hi, hello, how you doing? Thanks very much for the invite onto the show. It's much appreciated. I guess you probably want me to talk a little bit about Roborocket and kind of like how it began and essentially what it is. So basically, Roborocket Miniatures was born out of the worry for being able to afford my son. Actually, my wife told me that she was pregnant, and within a week I'd already hatched an idea of kind of how I needed to be earning more money. At the time, I was working in care as a support worker, looking after vulnerable adults. I wasn't earning a lot of money at all, as I'm sure you guys know. In the UK, carers aren't particularly paid well, and I needed something to kind of supplement my lack of income or low income. I had £800 in my bank account in my savings, I just took it from there. I started working with a sculptor. That fell through, and then I saw a sculptor post a piece online that he'd sculpted, and it was for sale. And I guess that kind of became fate. I kind of had to enlist a load of my mates' help for free. One of my friends built me a website, which was great.
Good friends.
And then just started casting this piece and really went from there. You know, asked a lot of my friends for advice, and that was a long road. So that's the dwarf with a pipe. It was limited to 80 copies, and 3 years later we sold our last copy about a month ago. So it did well in initial sales for a first piece, but then it kind of sloped off a bit, and
true to the namesake.
3 years later we sold the last one.
Yeah, you could almost say, Matt, it was a long road.
It was an awful long road for a long road, but it was. It's been interesting.
I just painted him the other day. I found when I went through my whole collection, I found it just sitting there under everything. I was like, "Fucking hell! I actually want to paint this." And
I noticed that you started painting that the other day.
Yeah, he's it's a good little model. I left the pipe out.
Yeah, I think what attracted me to it was the fact that it was very simple, and it was adaptable, and you could turn it into a lot of other things. Unfortunately, we didn't see much of that. So,
to be fair, mine's a surfer dude, so
okay,
that's slightly different, isn't it?
That's quite different. Surfer dwarf.
You know, I also didn't know he was a dwarf. I thought it was. I imagined him to be like just old and a man. So I should have read the blurb.
I think you can definitely get that from the sculpt, and that's kind of where I meant it was adaptable. It's supposed to be a dwarf. A lot of people get that it's a dwarf from like the nose features and the ear features and stuff like that. But also it lends itself to other things.
So from there, you've kind of stemmed off into two main ranges, haven't you? You've got your life range and your Evo Punk range. Is that correct?
Yep, certainly. And we're also actually starting another range which will be based on fantasy, named after a long road. So the range will be called A Long Road. and one of the first pieces that will be coming out for that will be from Peder Bartholdi, and it will be a fantasy critter, so kind of in the same ilk as our life range, where we've been producing animals and things based on reality. The first piece in this range will be based on the diary of the dwarf, who is a long road, and his entries into this diary. And the first one is essentially an animal that he comes across on his journeys. So I won't speak too much more about that, because I haven't discussed with Heather whether we're going to be pre-showing it or not. So, but for now, that's on the horizon. Yeah, and then our other two ranges, as you mentioned, is This Life, based on the beauty of reality.
I think
animals.
you've sent us some images, so if we could try and pull them up on the gallery, gives viewers some idea. So how
the
did
new ones or the old ones?
No, the life ones, the animals. Do you know what I mean?
Sorry,
Leave it with me.
Did you say that again, Lauren?
Yeah, so the life range is very unique. You don't see many people producing like life animals and whatnot. How did that come about? Why did you go down that particular line?
Okay, so I'm a huge fan of David Attenborough and those documentaries, something that I grew up on, and I also noticed within the market that there was a massive gap to have a full range of things based on reality and the interest within reality and the beauty. So that kind of evolved into, at first it came out and we had the Old Lady of Bali, which depicts a old lady from Bali. And then that kind of just snowballed into, let's do some animals. I spoke to a couple of friends about it and they thought, yeah, I mean, this is a really good idea. There was a gentleman, and I can't remember his name, unfortunately. I've seen him at SMC a couple of times with a stand. He was producing a lot of kind of big safari animals, elephants,
I've seen them,
tigers. I think he's done like this beautiful water buffalo. But I noticed that there weren't many, I guess, smaller animals like the kingfisher that you can see on the screen right now. And we've done a koala, we've done an orangutan, and we've done a chameleon, which you can see here. That's the orangutan, all sculpted by Peder Bartholdi and painted by Yosu Alai. He's one of my good friends. That, apart from the kingfisher, which was painted by myself, but that was more of a I don't know how to put it, like an emotional thing for me. The reason that we did a kingfisher is it reminds me of my granddad. And it was just something that I had to produce at the time. And
did he like kingfishers or something else?
Do I say that again? Did he like kingfishers?
Did he like kingfishers?
We used to do a lot of fishing when I was younger, and my granddad always used to tell me about how rare like kingfisher birds were, and how kind of like when you saw them, they were just kind of like these blue streaks that used to like fly through the air, but we used to go down to this place called Dinton Pastures, which is over in Reading, and we always used to see a kingfisher. And then shortly after he passed away, I went on a fishing trip with my dad and a group of friends, and we were going along up in the Norfolk Broads, and I could see this kingfisher in the reeds to the right of the boat, and as we were going along, it was flying along the side of the boat, and then it would stop and wait for us to get to it, and then carry on flying. And I think
house trained.
Yeah, it's just based on a memory, really. And it's just one of those things that it was kind of like an embodiment, like a symbolization of my granddad for me, like the stories that he used to tell. We were very close, so that's why at that point, I think at first I actually asked Yosu to paint it, and he turned around and he said, "No, I think you need to paint this one." And I was like, what do I know about painting a box art? You know, but I kind of came to the realization of actually it doesn't really matter how well it turns out or if it looks like a box art or not. That it is just a personal journey that I had to take.
Well, I think it is a pretty amazing paint job. Really love the effect that you managed to get on it. You know, I've seen it before in the flesh.
Was it easy?
All right. Range. Right.
I don't know. Oh, it's a range, is it?
Yeah. That's the third.
It's new though, isn't it? You can't blame me for not knowing. Right. I've unpaused now, so I hope I've unpaused. My internet broke, everyone, so we're back. And they had a discussion. They didn't realise, so we started talking about Evo Punk. So to carry on from where we were, either we do Evo Punk or you answer the question about if the Kingfisher was hard to paint.
Was the Kingfisher hard to paint? Emotionally, yes. However, when I first started it, I thought, my God, how am I going to do this? You know, because I mean, when you look at a Kingfisher, the textures, everything, the iridescence of the feathers, the contrast. You know, there's just so many different complex areas to that animal. I went into it almost afraid to paint it. I hadn't painted anything like it before. But as soon as I started painting it, it just seemed to flow. And for some reason, I felt like I knew what I was doing. And hopefully the end result. Hopefully the end result.
This was after your Kahana girl, right?
At least halfway to that. Sorry.
This was after your Kahana that you'd painted your own one.
Yeah, this was after Kahana. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're already an established painter, basically.
And myself.
Yeah, before you started Mr. Fish, you'd already done things to a high level.
I mean, I wouldn't say that. Like I've only been painting for about maybe, I guess, 4 or 5 years. But in that time, I think I've only painted maximum of about 10 things. So I don't really get a lot of time to paint, unfortunately. Far less than I wish I did. But I guess I do a lot more theory than I do practice, so that when I do paint, that theory tends to come out naturally in what I'm doing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's still hard to put theory into practice without the practice.
Yeah. Well,
how long did Mr. Fish take? Sorry, Lionel. Matt, how long did it take?
Sorry, Lionel. How long did what the Kingfisher? I actually painted the Kingfisher very quickly, for me anyway. In comparison to Kahana, which Kahana took me almost a year to paint, because I'd never painted anything that advanced in terms of volumes and complexity and textures before. So I painted the Kingfisher across about 2 weeks, and the SMC was my motivation for that, because I needed to have it ready for SMC.
Do you think that level of emotion attached to the subject matter hindered you, or do you think you've produced something emotionally charged, which is seen in the painting as a result of that human emotion attached to it?
I don't feel like it hindered me at all, to be honest. Actually, I thought it would do when I went into it, which is why I asked Joshua Light to paint it. And you know, once he heard the story, he like I said, he turned around and just said, "No, I really feel like you need to paint this as part of your journey." And I did, and like I said, it ended up painting itself. Really, I just went into the zone, and what came out was what I intended. I was really happy with the end result with it. Maybe to somebody else, if they don't know the story, you wouldn't understand the emotional attachment. But when I look at it, I see a lot more than just the paint job, if that makes sense. So.
Yeah. No, I think you've actually managed to really capture it well, capture that life, which is exactly what you're trying to achieve. So no, I think bloody good job.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So that leads us on to the third range. I guess,
Indeed.
which is Evo Punk. Evo Punk is a range based on really what I would say is my main interest and was my main aim for Roborocket Miniatures. Evo Punk is a range based on science fiction and cyberpunk busts and soon some figures, which I'll talk more about. Here on the screen, you can see one of the pieces, which is called Lock and Load. This is one of the pieces probably that I'm most proud of in the range, alongside Kahana. She was a concept by a gentleman called Abrar Khan. He works, I think, predominantly in the gaming industry. He's worked on games like The Division.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a Photoshop concept over the top of a photograph that was taken by another gentleman. I think his name's called Clayton Hagen. I'm sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly. And then Abra works with his photographs and superimposes with Photoshop over the top to create a more cyberpunk science fiction aesthetic.
I didn't realise they photoshopped over, because you showed the girl and the original photographers the models you did, didn't you? They were loving it.
Yeah. So we showed Clayton what we'd done, and obviously Abra, the concept artist, and both of them were blown away by what we were doing.
It's pretty cool. Yeah.
The sculpt itself is by Charles Aegis, who is in my mind, and I think it's quite evident that he's probably one of the most up and coming sculptors at the moment. He's definitely filled a particular gap in the market with his fantasy work, and I'd noticed his capability and his eye for detail. And I approached him and I said that I know that you're predominantly working in the fantasy genre. However, I really think your eye for detail would transfer very well to sci-fi. And he ran with it really. He took this and we ended up with what I would consider probably one of the most complex detailed pieces in our range. And he absolutely smashed it. He went above and beyond all of my expectations with how accurate to detail it was.
The translation's pretty nuts, isn't it?
So what we're looking here is 3 images. So the first one is the concept art. The middle one is actual digital sculpt.
Yeah.
And the third one is
the box art.
Outrageous paint job of the actual bust.
Yeah.
That's not a digital paint job either. That's
that is the actual bust photographs that are now sent me. He absolutely nailed it and and blew the doors off when he sent me photographs of the arm alone. I was just like,
it's
wow.
Weird, isn't it?
Was it art though? Painted that?
Actually looks almost more detailed than the original photo.
So it's painted by Arnau Lazaro Azcarate. I'm sorry if I pronounce this wrong. I'm rubbish with pronunciation. But again, I think something about this project that I noticed the entire way through was the level of love from everybody that was involved with it, from concept to sculpt, and then to Arnau, who when I showed it to him was just like, I need to paint this. And afterwards was just, the thing about it is there's a lot of black, and it is extremely difficult to balance that many different types of black in one piece. And he, like I said before, he nailed it.
It's crazy, really, isn't it?
Just at every level, there was just a very intense level of interest in this piece. So we came out with the best possible product. yeah, it's just something that I and everyone that was involved with has been very, very proud of.
Yeah.
What that photo doesn't show as well is actually, I was surprised when I saw it how big the bust actually is. It's a big piece of resin.
Yeah, it's I think due to the cut, sorry, I keep on looking left because that's where my cabinet is.
That's where I'm looking, yeah.
It's 93 millimeters from the top of the head to the bottom, but due to the cut, because it's just like an upper torso cut, it's quite large. Yeah, it's quite a large piece, but it gives enough room for the freehand and also the micro details that were involved that Charles sculpted. It kind of had to be that scale, otherwise the micro details would have been unpaintable. They wouldn't have been enjoyable to paint because they would have been so tiny. It would have been like, what's the point? So yeah, it just had to be a larger scale, but it is quite monstrous when you see it in person. It is definitely eye-catching.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's bigger than I thought. Done a good job.
Thanks.
It's surprising that this. I mean, he's pretty up and coming, right? This painter, because everything he does is just like fucking gold at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, you could say that he took platinum at SMC.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, when I saw him afterwards, I don't think I've ever met anyone so humble in my entire life. Like he was just like, oh yeah, it's cool. But I was like, mate, you've just taken platinum at SMC. Like,
I didn't even know they had a platinum.
Yeah, I mean, it's awesome. Like,
I think in terms of the new blood, both him and Itami are ones to watch. They're going to be future masters,
and massively, and I think it's not even future masters. I think we are at the brink of where they are. I would 100% classify them as masters of what they do. Not that I think the title of master is, it's not, I guess to me that doesn't really mean much. Like, you're a master of this. I mean, they're just artisans. They are incredible at what they're doing, and they are at the top of their game. Athami's work is absolutely next level, and so is Arnau, and really they fit perfectly with the kind of brand and the Evo Punk range that I'm trying to create, which is that kind of high contrast work that's very eye catching.
Really punchy.
Do you not find their work intimidating? Like, when I look at their work, I find it's too good for me, because it's a level that I don't ever feel I can ever. It's just it's a level of, it looks like a fucking photo, like it's crazy.
Yeah,
I can't aspire
it
to
doesn't
that
make it any easier having lots of their pieces, scattered around my studio, my cabinets and stuff, just staring at me, looking at me like, look how great I am. You'll never reach reach these lofty heights.
But that's
have you tried to?
Though, isn't it?
No, but there's box art and then there's box art. I think.
I'm really sorry. I didn't catch that.
Go on, Lionel.
I was just saying, but obviously that's the point of box art, isn't it? To show the piece off at its best.
Absolutely.
I've had interesting. What do you think about this, Matt? As a model designer, like, I've been having different thoughts on it, right? So obviously you want to show off the model as best as possible, but I've had a trail of thoughts recently where it's like, if you get a realistic paint job, it will entice more people because they won't be intimidated by it. Like, anybody buying this model, there won't be many people who can be like, right, I'll do that job. But they might buy it thinking they'll be able to do it, and then realise when they paint they can't do it. So you get sales that way.
You mean painting to that level, you mean?
Yeah, like, that's brilliant. I'll do that.
Yeah, I guess it's difficult. It's one of those things that I think, providing that you show the piece when you release it in its rawest resin form, for me, it's not about really enticing. And I know that sounds weird as a sales company, but something that's really important for me is that at every level in a project, the people involved are enjoying what they're doing, and with that, I guess you have to give artists a degree. I say a degree, almost total freedom to paint how they want to paint it. With this piece, I didn't essentially say that it had to be painted like the concept, but me and I now both agreed that it would probably be best to be painted similar to the concept. Whereas if you look at the Tenguko, which is painted by Kirill, there you go, you can see it. Now, that photo only shows this piece from one angle. And does the paint job show every aspect of the model in its entirety? No. But is it a really, really cool paint job that is eye-catching and is different? Yeah, hell yeah. I mean, when you look
stand
at it,
out,
like,
wasn't it?
You're almost like, what is that? But it draws the eye in, and then you're like, what? Like, wow, this is insane. But I think
it is a joke.
Most of you saw it at SMC last year.
Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah.
So this actual piece from the other side is completely red, and it's just a mind-blowing paint job. Does it show off the box art in the way that when you look at Games Workshop box arts and every single line is highlighted or edge lighted so that you can see every volume of the model in it, and it's lined and everything. No, it doesn't. But this side of the hobby for me isn't about that. It's about creative license and being able to have that freedom to do something that is mind-blowing. And why not use that as a box art? I can show people photos of the raw form cast, and they can make up their mind how they want to paint it and whether they want to purchase it. But I want something really cool on the front of my boxes.
I mean,
have you ever been tempted to... Oh, go on, Lon.
Sorry. Likewise, I've noticed Rogueland Studio is doing a version of Lock and Load as well. Very different interpretation, but still fantastically executed. And I think it just goes to show you can approach it in many different ways. I mean, obviously, he's a very accomplished artist, pro artist as well. Yeah. But you can approach a piece in many different ways and put your own stamp on it. So,
absolutely, I think it's just a case of the actual model itself tells a story anyway, which is that of hope and that prayer before or after battle or whatever it is to you. But it has enough freedom that it will allow lots of interpretations, and that is always going to attract those high level artists because they're essentially interested about telling their own story or their own version. And if there's room to do lots of different versions of that, then you're gonna pull the crowd in.
Yeah.
Well,
are you ever tempted to maybe not commission, but like obviously the Kingfish you did yourself, but that was more for sentimental reasons. Are you ever tempted to get a new model and get a painter that's not fucking fantastic? I personally am not sure that's the right way to go, but have you ever thought about it?
What do you mean? Is in like instead of getting someone that is already established and well known, getting someone that is an up and coming painter?
Yeah. Just maybe to give them more exposure, or because I think the risk you run is
when I first started working with Athami, he was known. But he was nowhere near as well known as he is now. So that was probably one of the, in that essence, I don't think you could say that when we started working together, he wasn't good at painting. I mean, his level of painting at that stage was already incredibly high. But for some reason, he wasn't one of the household names, one of the
He's come
mainstream
up quickly
painters.
though, hasn't he?
Whereas now I think a lot more people are taking notice of his work, because it is just that next level of mind blowing, and you can no longer call him up and coming. He is at the top of his game.
Yeah, I agree.
One thing I will say though is that when you talk to him about it, he is ridiculously humble, and you know he always says like, no, I'm not. You know, there's always more to learn, and I think as an artist that's a great trait to have, because I think as soon as you start thinking that, you know, you're at the top of your game and you've made it, that's when you stop trying. And he, in my mind, is not the one, but one of the best artists at pushing the boundaries currently in what is possible and what can be done. And that is all about observation. His observation is incredible. When you look at his work, and you know the subtle observations about uplighting, like under the nose or the chin and certain things like that maybe other artists wouldn't take into account, that is what is making the difference in his work for sure, is his observation for
I still don't know
reality.
How you can do that. Like, he's told me, you need to observe more, Jamie, you're a piece of shit. And I'm like, I don't know why he's Borat.
Well, he's not wrong, is he?
Yeah, well, yeah. But I don't know how to translate that. Like, okay, I can observe more, but still, to be able to notice and then translate.
You've got to paint more, Jamie. Honestly,
Matt doesn't paint much. He's only done 10 models, so I should be like more like Matt.
Well, yeah. If you want to observe the level that Jamie's doing, then it's observation and an application. If you don't, that is how those guys become so good, because they're doing both.
I've got to say as well, since that interview where he said observe canvas art more, I've been making an effort to look at it more. And obviously, once you start, I'm not saying I can relate it to a model, but once you see a 2D canvas and you zoom and you look at the brushstrokes, it does make it easier. I mean, even if you look at the Warhammer artwork, digital artwork, if you zoom in and you see where the layers are, the information is easy to interpret. Yeah.
I think a fantastic, underrated source of inspiration and knowledge are the fantasy art magazines. So the magazines where you're painting on Photoshop or one of those kind of softwares, and they tell you so much about the observations and about how if you place a light here or in certain places that you'll get a certain result.
Really
and not a lot of people use them. Weirdly, I find in this hobby, because when we're painting, you have, even though it's a 3D model, you will have kind of maybe a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 golden angles where you're kind of like, okay, I'll hold the model at this angle, the light formations hit here and etc., and then you turn it, and then you need to paint it at this angle, and then you turn it and paint it at this angle. But every time that you're looking at it as a human being, your eyes are seeing the model in 2D at a certain angle. So how is that any different to painting on Photoshop or anything like that? It's not. You're painting looking directly at something, which then to your eyes becomes a 2D painting at a specific angle, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. I actually hadn't thought about it. What magazines were they? Because
I think there's one called Fantasy Plus, and Spectrum. An amazing one is Spectrum. Is incredible. I've only got the copies from 17 to 26, but you will actually see some of the sculptors from the industry in there, like Patrick Masson. Some of their work is in there. They are incredible sources of inspiration.
Yeah, because I find nuanced where to play stuff you can get from painting, but at the same time, if I'm not reading or advancing, I don't learn that much from painting. I don't learn where to place the paint that well, at least from my experience.
Is so if you go back to the core kind of like learning of the fact that every single one of us learns in a different way. You know, Lionel might be more theory and then application, and then Peter might be more application, less theory. Everybody's brain works in a different way. They process different things. Obviously, especially yours, Jamie. We all know that. And
yeah, I don't.
and you know, for me, I learn more by doing more theory, and then just painting, and then that theory then comes out in the piece that I'm painting.
Yeah.
Whereas someone else might not like reading books or sitting watching videos, and they just want to paint and learn themselves by making mistakes. Everyone's different, so
it's tough.
Going back to your range, what's your favourite piece? What's your personal favourite, and why?
Ooh,
that's painted or sculpted?
A really difficult question. Okay, so I think it has to be Kahana. The reason being is that one piece provided the entire future for Roborocket Miniatures.
Okay.
We brought out a long road, which did well, and it allowed me to invest in Kahana. But Kahana just blew up. I didn't really expect it, but I think it was just a case of right time, right aesthetic. Lots of boxes were ticked. It kind of had that cyborg, oriental, Ghost in the Shell had just been released. And in at face value, it looks like a great model, but when you look deeper, it has loads of fantastic kind of little bits in it, kind of like the pug helmet, the pug shoulder plate, you know, and it gives you room to play. It has that freedom of space on her t-shirt that allows you to do, you know, cool free hands and stuff like that. And I guess it just that piece is just the epitome of what Roborocket was going to be about, and it basically just provided financially and commercially a healthy future for Roborocket Miniatures. Like I said, I started with very little money, and it was just going to be a case of selling piece to piece, and if it went wrong, and that was it. But you know, a long road paid for Kahana, but Kahana then paid for the next 5 pieces. So it was.
And when was that piece released?
Crikey. I don't remember. I think it was released
2 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago.
It was 2018, I think. I think it came out in 2018.
Right, okay.
Yeah,
nailed it. Are
she's
you
always out of stock as well, isn't she? Because you get her in, and she's such a striking and unusual piece that she goes straight back out the door again.
Yeah, as happy as I should be about that, it can actually be really annoying, because every time I reorder another batch, I'm like, this will probably be the last batch. This will last me for ages, and then another 50 go. And then I'm like, no, I'll order another, 50, and that'll be the last batch. No, and they're gone. And I think
start doing
we're at the point now where it's like 750 casts or somewhere around about that kind of level. I actually got to the point where I had to send the original back to Pedro to
fix it up.
Create some new
to basically fix it up, resculpt certain areas to make new masters. It's just insane, and it still sells. Even to this day, you know, we still sell a few a week. So it's
so much postage, so much boxing you have to do. You're endlessly boxing.
Right. I learned at an early stage that my packaging was sturdy enough that I could put it in padded envelopes, and that it would still land with the customer in its full integrity.
That's good.
So switching to padded envelopes was an eye opener for me, because boxing everything up is just an absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
So speaking of Kohana, it's probably now a opportune moment to have your first reveal.
Yeah, certainly.
For us.
So let me just give you a little bit of background about this, because it's not just as simple as Roborocket Miniatures are releasing a 75mm version of Kohana. Charles Aegis, who we spoke about earlier, probably one of the most up and coming sculptors in the industry, incredible sculptor, great guy to work with, is now going to basically be working in collaboration with us for the foreseeable future on his own range, on the Evo Punk range, and dedicating a certain amount of his time to be working with Roborocket Miniatures on a collaboration basis. So the first piece that we decided to start off with on this was Kohana 75mm. And when we went into it, we kind of decided that we don't just want to offer the same regurgitated pose, the same look and that kind of thing, but we still wanted to keep the integrity of Kohana and the story and the essence of what she is. So what we decided was that she would be almost kind of like recharging, and that the piece, instead of being called Kohana, would be called Reconnect. Obviously reconnecting to Kohana, the figure, but also the figure depicts her recharging in a Japanese garden.
I think we've got if we can get the image up while Matt's talking about it. Oh.
This is.
Shall I show it?
The render of Reconnect in collaboration with Charles Aegis.
Oh wow!
Probably a little bit difficult to see on that screen.
Zoom in like that. Look.
There you go.
Yeah.
So as you can
render
see,
is really
in
good
essence,
as well.
Yeah, his renders are absolutely incredible.
Yeah. It makes you want to paint it more.
That's always good. We're actually uncertain of whether we will go for a box art on this, or whether we could just use the render on the box. It's that cool. And because we're working in collaboration commercially, it may be better for us to do that. We don't know yet. Obviously, it depends on the success of the piece, because I tend to work on a basis of every piece pays for its own merit, its own box art, etc. So as you can see from the only part of the original pose from the Kohana bust is her right arm, which is the piece holding the lily, as you can see there. And she's more in a much rested pose. We decided to go with that because we thought that it suited the aesthetic of her holding the lily, that holding the lily wasn't really a realistic battle pose, and that we wanted to show we wanted it build upon that tender feeling of the robot looking at the flower and kind of looking at something that is so alive, and then the contrast between something that is so alive against the hard surface of her body and something that is so not alive, if that makes sense. So the ring behind her is something that we intended to make it look like it is she's there to kind of recharge, so she's coming back to this kind of area to recharge her soul, to recharge her batteries.
Nice.
We're both extremely proud of this piece, and I cannot wait to put it out there and bring it to market and see people paint it, because it is just I don't, not that I want to blow my own trumpet, because I had nothing other to do with it other than the idea, but Charles is just exquisite.
Yeah, that's
Really good.
an impressive piece.
Yeah.
What kind of timescales are we looking at for pre-release orders and shipping and whatnot? Or is that too early to say?
So it's a little bit too early to say. I'm just waiting on another piece of the print, and then it's off to the caster. So it will definitely be on pre-order, probably in a month or two time.
Okay, not too far away then.
And then hopefully it will be ready when we start to come out of this this lockdown and everything. But as far as I know, I've spoken to our casters over at Broken Toad, and they're continuing to cast you because they're very isolated in the area that they're in. And their casting studio is very isolated, so they're continuing to cast throughout this, as far as I know. So it's not really causing a delay to our production, which is great. We're very grateful for that. But we tend to run pieces on pre-order, so it should be up in a month, 2 months time for pre-order, and then you'll be looking at a 2 month wait for casts, packaging, and then posting. So, yeah.
Do you know how many parts it will be?
Sorry?
Do you know how many parts it will be?
Yeah, I can tell you. Bear with me 1 second. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. It's about between 16 and 18 pieces, somewhere thereabouts.
Do you know?
But the detail is absolutely phenomenal in the print.
It's 75 mil, right?
Yeah, it's 75 millimeter.
Is there?
We'll be running a special pre-order price on it. I'm still yet to find out how much the casts each will cost in production. So I can't really give you a price right now. But once we do, then it'll be up with a special pre-order price.
And obviously, we'll make sure we share that as well, so that anyone who's seen it now can, when you start, releasing that sort of detail, we'll make sure we'll push that out too, so that anyone who's seen it now can pick it up.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
I've not seen the photos, but was there a photo of the 3D print, physical 3D print?
I don't know if I sent Jamie a photo of the 3D print.
Okay. All right. So
I don't think I did.
Okay. So
I might have sent it to you across chat. But something else that will be coming out alongside this is I don't like calling them anatomical, but there'll be a practice bust that comes out alongside this. That will be just the torso of the figure, so it will be no arms and cut just underneath the breast line. But obviously, due to the fact that she's a robot, and it will have part of the kimono draped over the shoulder, so it'll basically just offer an array of textures to paint. Something that would be good for workshops, or if you're looking to practice certain textures or freehands on the kimono.
So the hair and all that sort of thing as well. As part of that. So that could be quite an interesting. Yes, particularly
it's the advantage of 3D, isn't it?
Academic busts are proving very popular at the moment, aren't they?
They are. I think there's been a weird kind of trend in calling busts academic. I think, to me, in my mind, an academic bust is almost like a cut face shooting forward of a naked.
It's like the anonymous stuff, right?
Whereas, I think it's more kind of, I guess, a practice bust that's, it's small, it's simple, it offers an array of textures, and it's just a one-piece bust, so you can literally take it straight out of the packaging, mount it, and you're good to go.
Yeah.
And are you looking at release at roughly the same time as well? So pre-orders in about
It'll come out. It will come out at the same time. Yeah.
Okay. Brilliant.
Was there any other sneaky peeks that we've got, Jamie?
I
don't know if I'm allowed, so I'm waiting.
I think I sent Jamie a couple of other snaps of some stuff that we had coming out that we were basically preparing for World Expo. The obviously inevitable has happened due to the coronavirus and everything that's happening, and unfortunately World Expo has been postponed until next year. However, we will be looking to bring these pieces out around about the time that World Expo was for this year.
Okay.
Don't want to disappoint people. Unfortunately, I'm terrible at keeping secrets. So I have shown several people this, and they're all absolutely gagging to get their hands on it. So there's two pieces. Both pieces are based on concept art by a lady from Norway called Mona Finden. She's a really cool artist. This piece is called Defeated.
Nice.
It depicts a young teenage girl that has chopped the head off an Oni demon, and sculpted by, again, I'm really rubbish at pronunciation, so I'm sorry if this is wrong, by a lady called Lua Garo, and she's done a fantastic job. Looks fantastic. There's this piece, and then there's another piece called Wind Rider, which depicts a young female samurai, or an onabushi, riding a dragon, basically.
What scale's that?
It's going to be 75mm.
Wow.
It's an absolute beast. Sorry. Yep. So something that me and Charles are looking into for the future is to procure a 3D printer, so that we may create a sub company or something that Charles will run from where he is, which will basically deal with large collectibles. And something that we would be looking to do is to produce all of the pieces that Charles sculpts for Roborocket, and some of the pieces that we've had sculpted by other people, and produce them in larger scale, in the larger scale kind of like collectibles. So
yeah, because I can almost imagine that in almost like a big bronze, not actual bronze, like the bronzed resins that they do. That's something quite different. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, again, Lua is an up-and-coming sculptor. I would say probably not a lot of people will have heard of her yet. However, she is fantastic to work with. She's really upbeat and really passionate. And when I showed her the concept, she just ran with it and was just like, this is it is very complex. However, I'm willing to take on the challenge, and I'm so happy that I don't want to say I took the chance, because I didn't feel like I was chancing it, but she took the opportunity and she ran with it. And I looking at her previous work, she did some stuff for Nocturna, which came out at SMC. So she did the vampire woman walking down the steps with the pole arm, and she also did their the four elements. I think Nocturna did. Yeah. I think they did wind or something like that, and it was the clouds with the swan and the girl with the swallows coming out of the clouds. It was super impressive, and I knew at SMC, just as this was about to start, when I got there and I looked up and I saw the Nocturna poster that had that piece on it, that I'd chosen the right sculptor for this piece. Several people before I started it said, "Oh, maybe possibly it should be a traditional sculpt," but due to the complexity of it, I kind of felt maybe actually it would suit more towards being a 3D sculptor, due to the fact that you have that kind of flexibility where you're able to move things and change things if needed a lot easier than if it was done in traditional sculpt form.
I think that's my favourite out of the teasers you've given us. They're all very good, but that's my personal favourite. That one invokes quite a lot of emotion. It's a very nice piece.
Thank you.
Really good.
In terms of the current climate, there's obviously people with a lot of time at home at the moment, painting, wanting to do stuff. Are Roborocket Miniatures still shipping products? How do they get a hold of their products from you? What's the best way to get a hold of stuff?
Okay, brilliant. So yes, we are still shipping. We've reduced our shipping amount to once a week. That's purely to lower the risk of bringing anything into my household. I've got a little boy who's 3 years old, and my wife's a key worker, so it's absolutely paramount that I have to look after our safety and our customers' safety in what we're doing. So we are compiling all orders across the week, and then we ship out on a Saturday. And that's purely because it lowers the risk of, like I said, it just lowers the risk of bringing a thing into the household. We have a click and drop account also, which means that my time in the post office is limited. It's very, very low. So I literally walk in, I know them well, I hand them the bag, and they process, boom, and it's gone. So I don't have to be in the post office for long periods of time around, like snotty sneezing people or get any exposure basically. And yeah, you can purchase all of our products from our website, which is www.roborocketminiatures.co.uk.
Okay, brilliant. And all your stock levels are live, are they?
Yeah, so all of our stock level are live. You can see what we've got in stock on the website. And it kind of gives you a counter to tell you exactly what we've got in stock, how many we've got in stock, so you know if it's low, whether you should purchase sooner or not. We're very honest about that. I don't like to play on people's on their emotions or their urgency to purchase. Yeah.
Cool.
Brilliant. Right. Well, thank you for that, Matt. That's been really good talking, and really, really great to see some of those the new bits and pieces, because that's a really some special additions to your range. I'm quite
absolutely
like to see what they look like in the flesh.
I think as well, like we've concentrated so much on busts over the last few years, and a lot of people have been kind of begging us almost to start looking at doing some 75mm figures. So we thought it's about time that we started looking into that, and I think that we've got a pretty strong hand with these pieces that will be coming out, and I can tell you that between me and Charles Aegis, we have some incredible stuff planned that will blow the socks off the industry when it comes out and when it's seen. So get ready for that, because it's going to be amazing. Well,
you've heard it here first, guys. We're going to be blowing off the socks of the industry. And,
I'm going to wear
stuff. I don't doubt that for a second. You did it with your hand, and I'm sure you'll do it with your next look. So, yeah, thanks for sharing that.
No problem. Thank you very much for the invite as well.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Matt. Appreciate it.
No worries.
See you later, guys.
See you later.
Hey guys.
Bye.
Bye.